Hello and welcome to another monolithic tanking guide. In this video I'll be going over the core Death Knight abilities. Okay, to start with, Outbreak. It's a 60-second cooldown that applies both your diseases to your target. Very standard, very useful. I use it as an opener. I also use it if I don't get a Crimson proc to refresh my diseases on my target. Icy Touch is a direct damage ability that applies a dot from range. It's essentially only going to be used to apply the dot should it ever fall off without Outbreak off cooldown. Had you missed it maybe with a Crimson Scourge proc or just not blood boiling before it did. Same with a Plague Strike except it's melee. Heart Strike is a 1 blood rune cost, 3 target cleave. It does decent damage, and it does more damage to enemies that have both your diseases on them. So always have your diseases up on your target so Heart Strike does more damage. Death Strike is your main healing ability. It does a whole bunch of weapon damage, plus it heals you for 20% of the damage you sustain through the last 5 seconds of non-player sources. Minimum healing of 7% of your maximum health, and it cannot be parried. It can be dodged and it can miss. Cannot be parried. Rune Strike just hits really hard, and it cannot be dodged, blocked, or parried. So it will always hit unless you're not hit or hit capped. It's your runic power dump. Blood Boil is your AoE ability. It does damage to all enemies within 10 yards, and it does 50% more damage to enemies inflicted with either Blood Plague or Frost Fever. So always have your diseases up, and this will hit really hard. Death and Decay drops some poop on the ground, and it does a whole bunch of damage to everything in it for 10 seconds. One damage tick per second. Soul Reaper is your execute. Under 35% health, you'll want to use this on cooldown with a blood rune. Do not use death runes on this ability, only use blood runes. It is a single target dot that after 5 seconds, it'll blow up essentially and hurt the enemy really bad and give you a haste buff. So always use this because that haste buff matters. Dark Command is a single target taunt, and in case you have trouble holding aggro, you can also use it on cooldown to give you a 200% threat boost for 3 seconds. Death Grip is a single target taunt that also jerks the enemy to you. Horn of Winter is a raid buff that gives you 10 runic power, so use it. Empower Rune Weapon gives you runic power and refreshes all of your runes. Use that when you need to. Anti-Magic Shell absorbs magic damage when you use it. Bone Shield gives you a 6 charge shield that absorbs physical damage by 20% per time you get hit by it. Dancing Rune Weapon increases your parry by 20% while it's active, and summons a weapon that does damage while you do damage, using every ability you use on the boss, for about 75% of the damage you do. Vampiric Blood increases your health by 15% and your healing received by 25% for 10 seconds. Rune Tap heals you for 10% of your health. Raise Dead summons a dead guy to fight with you. Army of the Dead summons a bunch of them. Mind Freeze is a single target interrupt. Strangulate is a single target silence. Death's Advance is a move speed buff. Icebound Fortitude reduces damage taken by 50% for 12 seconds and breaks stuns and makes you immune to stuns. Remorseless Winter is an AoE slow and turns into an AoE stun. Death Coil is a ranged runic power dump that does direct damage. Dark Simulacrum doesn't matter for a tank, however, it puts a buff on a target, and if they use a magic ability, sometimes you'll be able to use it back. It doesn't work on all abilities, and very few in PvE. Desecrated Ground breaks you out of crowd control or loss of control abilities and makes you immune to them while you stand in the AoE. Gorfian's Grasp pulls all enemies to your target within 20 yards. Blood Tap allows you to regenerate a death rune on command. Anti-Magic Zone drops a raid-wide AoE. That reduces magic damage taken by 40% for 30 seconds. Lichborn makes you undead for 10 seconds. While this is active, you are immune to charm, fear, and sleep. And if you use Death Coil on yourself, it will heal you for about 150,000 per use.